Somehow we're already more than halfway through the year, so it's time to do the mid-year book tag. Friends, hello. I'm Olivia. This is AV Club, where I'm usually talking lit fic, horror books, otherwise weird books, whatever kind of books I want to talk about. And today, it's mostly a retrospective of my reading of the first half of the year with a little bit of looking to the future. This is a modified version of the mid-year book freak out tag, which don't remember who originally did it, but that'll be in my past years. I've been using the same kind of modified questions for the past few years, and I think the modified ones were from Books and Lala, but don't quote me on that. I just pulled the questions from my last year's notes. The first of which being, how is your reading going this year? And honestly, uh, recent events aside, I feel like it's been going really well. I feel like I've been mostly rating books pretty highly, been pretty satisfied. I don't know if I'm just easily satisfied this year or what's going on. I think that whenever I haven't liked a book, for the most part, it hasn't been, um, just kind of mid books. Like I've been kind of able to pinpoint why I didn't like a book. I wasn't reading so much in June, had just getting back into the swing of things really after being really knocked down by COVID and just like how that ripple effects and then getting sick again and then being depressed. Like it's just been kind of hard to get back in the swing of things. But I'm so excited about the books I'm reading now, and I just feel positive, nothing but positive feelings about my reading for the rest of this year. And I just feel like I've been reading a good mix of things that I already should have read, things that I've enjoyed discussing, as well as keeping up to date with a lot of new releases. I will say that I don't know that I've read as much lit fic as I would like lately. Like whenever I get to my end of the month discussions, I'm like, oh, poof. I say that I talk about lit fic, but it's been mostly speculative lately, which is fine. Like I'm not, too stressed, but I just want to make sure I'm still reading a good mix of things. The next question is your best book of the year, which I will then have two answers for this because I think counting horror and lit fic or general fiction. I guess like sometimes I will call things lit fic, which are more like upmarket general fiction, but I just find that such a clunky term that I feel like lit fic, if it's upmarket at all, I feel like calling it lit fic is fine. So my best horror book of the year so far is Molka by Monica Kim. I did a whole review of this. It was a intense story about the horrors of hidden cameras in South Korea. And this is done by men all over the country for both just perverse personal gain or for money, selling videos of private women, women's private moments either in bathrooms or in the bedroom, etc., on the internet. And I just felt like it was like a good for her story that I could really root for. The revenge comes like so late in the novel, but it does get to it, and I just feel like it was cathartic to read. It is definitely you read from the disgusting men's points of view, so it is intense in that way, and I do think makes it feel more akin to extreme horror than some of the other horror that I review on the channel because it is like so gross and puts you in that POV, whereas a lot of horror doesn't want you to, not even, it's not that the book empathizes with the men, but it does put the reader in a more precarious point, if they're not complicit in the action, but it kind of feels like that if you're reading from a point of view. And then as far as lit fic or general fiction, I really loved A Good Person by Kirsten King. I keep thinking about this, and one of my goals for this year was to read more physical books because I was noting that I was rating those physical books higher. However, my two best books of the year so far I read on ebook, and for both of them I'm thinking like, I wish I had this book in my house. I wish I owned this as a physical thing. Um, And but A Good Person, gosh, the Australian cover just does not do it for me. I don't think that it really conveys the feeling of the book very well. So I don't know. Do I even want a physical version if it's not the book that I had in my mind? And A Good Person is a kooky little book. You are following from kind of an unhinged, weird girl narrator. She's not even that weird. She's just kind of like unhinged and obsessive, but she's been newly dating this guy and, kind of thinks they're exclusive, wants to be exclusive. Like, when is he finally going to ask me? We keep going out. And then he suddenly dies. And he suddenly dies at the same point that she finds out actually he has a girlfriend. And yeah, that was their relationship was never going anywhere. He didn't really think of her as something permanent or worthwhile in his life. And she just becomes more and more obsessed with both correcting what she thinks should have been happening in reality with him, as well as becoming obsessed with his actual girlfriend and intersecting with her life in a way that is, yeah, messy. But it's just the funniest book. It is truly the funniest book I've ever read, and I'm not caught off guard very often with my reading, but it kept catching me off guard, and I was laughing out loud lots. So, um, yeah, I just keep thinking about it. So good. And not the kind of book that while I was reading it would I have considered this might be my best book of the year because it was just like so fun and messy, but it just did it so well that it's hard to ignore it at this point. My best sequel of the year, it has to go to Miranda Darling's Fireweather because I don't believe I've read another sequel this year. Fireweather is, it can be considered a standalone novel, but it's really a companion novel that is chronologically after um, gosh, what is the other book called? Thunderhead by Miranda Darling. It does follow up on that, and I did like Fireweather more than I liked Thunderhead, so it was a good sequel in that sense. But these are stream of consciousness novels, very much lit fic. These are Australian novels. Fireweather was nominated for the Stella Prize long list this year. In Fireweather, it's a woman who has separated from her husband, who was manipulative and abusive to some degrees, but they've had children together. And this is a day in her life where she is not with her children, thinking about picking up her children. And it is a spiritual successor to Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. So it's very much about like a day in the life and stream of consciousness, but a modern Australian woman. And just little vignettes along her day. Sometimes it's thinking about the actual meat of her life and kind of the plot of the book, if there is a plot at all, but frequently it just goes on asides of thinking. I enjoyed it. I probably wouldn't have read it if not for the Stella Prize long list, but I'm glad I did. And then there is a favorite reread, which I have not reread any books, and I almost never reread books as much as I say that I think I should. So the closest thing that I have to a reread is Off Takes a Holiday by Sean McAuliffe, and this is kind of like a reread of Dracula for me, I guess, because it is very much a Dracula-like figure, but it is a satire, and so it is not truly a retelling, but I think spiritually a retelling, but it is kind of like Monty Python, if Monty Python remade Dracula, or I guess if Sean McAuliffe remade Dracula. Just a funny, quirky little book, both stupider and smarter than you'd maybe expect. And then a genre you've been loving. I do feel like I have been reading more gothic books, more queer gothic botanical books, and so there's kind of like a shared vibe here. They don't all have all of the attributes. Like, I loved Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, which is feels gothic. It's set at this weird boarding school, I guess a college, a university. It's not a real college, but it is, they're unearthing weird studies there, alchemical things, but it just feels like the university is like, or the college is like not even really there. It feels partially abandoned, and yet has all of these very strict rules about things. It's just a weird, vibey story that I really got on with. As well, I read both Hazelthorn and Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews, which are both young adult, queer, botanical horror, gothic. This one is set at a boarding school. Hazelthorn is set at like a state. And I just have been really in this energy space where I've really enjoyed it, as well as The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas I just read, which is also gothic. This one's set in Mexico and not really botanical. It's like the mines, mercury mining, just kind of all over the place, but a shared vibe of liking gothic-y things lately. I feel like I just use vibes more than I almost ever have. A new release you want to read? Well, whenever I wrote this down, I hadn't started it yet, but I have almost finished Worry Doll by Laura McPhee Brown, which was one of my most anticipated books of the year because I have loved both Cherry Beach by Laura McPhee Brown, as well as I read Little Plum earlier this year. And this one I think is her best yet. I can't wait to finish it. Can't wait to relook at all the things that I annotated, hopefully talk about it. I don't know how widely this is available internationally. It just came out in Australia last week, I think. And I think in the US, it is a Book of the Month exclusive release, but I don't even think it's a Book of the Month pick. I think it's like an add on that you can get through Book of the Month. So hopefully there are American readers. I think Canada gets Book of the Month as well. So hopefully there are readers that are picking it up over in North America as well. But this is just so good, so good. If you do have it available to you, I'll be talking about this again. But definitely check it out. It is, my understanding was it was about like a sapphic age gap romance, which is true, but the way that it's set up is the first half of the book is from the point of view of the older woman Heloise, and it is about her relationship with, she's having an affair with this woman from New Zealand, this younger woman from New Zealand, and it's about how obsessed she has become with her. But it's more complicated too by the fact that she loves her husband. Like, she doesn't want to be without her husband. She thinks very positively of him, but has also just gotten obsessed with the idea of this woman. And then the second half is from the point of view of Lacey, and she is back in New Zealand, and you're kind of seeing where her mindset was the whole first half of the book. The first half is a week in Heloise's life, and the second book is a week in Lacey's life. So really complicated relationships, not moralizing at all. So come into it with a sense of empathy from where these women are coming from, and that emotions and relationships are messy. And yeah, just absolutely loving it. And then for my most anticipated release, I don't know that there's exactly one thing specifically. I'm looking forward to Laura Elizabeth Willett, who is another Australian author. I'm looking forward to her release this year, which I think is on PMDD, if I'm not mistaken. And then I'm looking forward to reading Nightjars by Michael Way Hunt. His book, The October Film Haunt, was my best horror of the year last year, and I do have an arc of this waiting for me. I'm so excited to read it. I've just been kind of waiting till it gets closer to release time, but it'll be coming up probably in the next few weeks that I'll get to read it. So looking forward to that, which I think it comes out in September. Joshua Choplinski has a book coming out in September as well. September, I believe. The Man in the Clock. Oh, I don't remember the exact title of it, but I loved his book Letters to the Purple Satin Killer earlier this year, late last year. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I have an arc of that waiting for me as well. So yeah, just have, there's not like one specific book, but there's so much in the second half of the year that I am looking forward to reading, and stuff that I already have on the books, on the docket, on the books. My biggest disappointment this year, probably The Summer Fun Massacre by Craig DeLuey. just because I really wanted to read a summer camp slasher so bad. I did a full review of this, and it was just a much different book than advertised. And it wasn't a book that appealed to me because it was set up to be about this summer camp slasher, but the summer camp slasher has already happened before you read the book. Like it's already happened. And in the author's note at the end, he explains that his idea for this book was to write a book from the point of view of the bumbling but well-meaning town cop where one of these summer camp slashers happens. So like someone like Dewey from Scream. And I just, if I'd known that ahead of time, like that's just a different kind of book. It's just a different book, and it's not one that I would want to read necessarily because I don't love a book from a cop's point of view at the best of times. Even if it's even if I felt it was really compelling, but there was so much just about the town politics and the politics of this police station. So much of it was happening in the police station with these guys, and I just did not care who was going to be the sheriff next or who was going to be the mayor. Like I I didn't really care, especially because there was this like really interesting folk horror element to it that if it had been developed more, I could have liked it. I could have been swayed to like this book from this different point of view, but it just didn't do anything for me as it was. My favorite new author, the only person that I've read multiple books from this year that, and I've liked both of them, was C.G. Drews. I gave Don't Let the Forest In 3 stars. I liked it. Hazelthorn I liked a little bit more. I gave that one 4 stars, but she just has a very compelling writing style. I I will definitely keep reading from her, and I think she either has an adult book out or her next one is like her first adult book. And so I'm more interested to read something that's adult. However, I do think that she gets the young adult relationships a little bit more accurate. Like the boys in this are just like obsessive and don't behave rationally, and just that like single-mindedness about one person and being like overly dramatic. I feel like it read a lot more like a teenager than some other things with YA relationships where I'm like, you're an adult. You're an adult talking to another adult. And then sometimes you'll read adult stuff and you're like, you sound like a teenager talking to teenagers. But I felt like that was, if I had read that in my early high school years, it could have done a number on me for sure. And she's an Australian author, so we love that. My newest favorite character, I'm going to have to say, is Lillian from A Good Person. And she's unhinged, she's messy, but she is so funny. I think that I just don't have like a person who sticks out as a favorite character more than her. And I do think that she was like so intensely written and is so characterized that I think she deserves a spot as a favorite character, even though I would not want to be her, would not want to really know her, but she's a great character. For a book that made you cry, I know that I've cried during books this year, but I couldn't really remember what exactly. I think the overall saddest book that I read, or the most not cry worthy, but just like fragile, was Little Plum by Laura McPhee Brown. And this one is so, now that I'm reading Worry Doll, I'm like, Little Plum was so different because it just felt like the whole book was like fragile, and you felt the characterization of the main character being so fragile. She's pregnant, she's not with the father or anything, but she's decided that she wants to have this baby, and she goes on a international trip with her friend who's like trying to reconnect with family or something like that. But it is so much about like being in this like very fragile state and being obsessed with this thing growing inside you. But everything felt so like dainty and made of like sugar glass. Like it felt like there was such tension on every page, even though nothing was happening or there wasn't stakes, there wasn't anything bad that was actually going to happen. um no trauma or anything, but it just felt like such a fragility to it that was really well written. And I can't remember if it actually made me cry, but I do think it had a deep sadness to it. And then for a book that made you happy, I think Anna Dorn's American Spirits really did make me happy. This was a book that I read right after A Good Person. It was just like a banger for reading these two books back to back. But this one was about kind of like a Lana Del Rey figure mixed with Taylor Swift's fandom. So these like really obsessed fangirls, specifically like our main character is a really obsessed fangirl of this kind of Lana Del Rey figure, but they have this fandom where they have imagined that she has this deep romantic relationship with her best friend, and these people in this forum, I think it's a subreddit even in this book, are just obsessed with talking about it all the time, and everything in her songs is a hint towards this hidden romantic relationship that could never be. And just, if you've never delved into the fandom of Swifties, they really are this unhinged on the forums as well, and in their imaginings, and how much they read into lyrics to be about whatever they want it to be, and numerology, and it just, the rabbit hole is deep. But I think it made me happy because it was speaking to, because it was more of like a Lana Del Rey singer, not a Taylor Swift type of person, that it spoke so specifically to this time on Tumblr that it was really nostalgic for me, and that I've never seen represented in books before or in movies or really anywhere, that was done in a way that was, I guess, empathetic, but also accurate, and also showed, I guess, the highs and lows of it. And I just felt like it was a really compelling book, compelling to read, definitely a page turner. And I love, is, the way that the social media elements were done in this book. So yeah, I think it made me happy. I think most books make me happy when I like them. So, but this one specifically, I like a Tumblr book. And then my most beautiful book, I do really love Worry Doll. I think this looks so good, but my most beautiful one is the one that I've currently done my nails to match, which is Homebound by Portia Alon, which I did start, but I needed to get to other things first, and I really wanted to get to Worry Doll on release week. So I put this down to pick that up, but I am really enjoying this one as well, which is about it's set in the late 80s. Well, it's set across a lot of time, 1983, so early 80s. And Bex is a woman who is taking over, learning early computer programming, and taking over this game making project from her late uncle. And so that's where I've been introduced to her so far in this book. But then it jumps forward to like the 2500s, and there's people on spaceships traveling. And I think it says there's might be like 5 or 6 different timelines going on, but it's like how this game that she has made has ended up having rippling effects over time. So I'm really interested to see where this goes, but I just think this is such a beautiful cover, and everything about it is so nice. I love the foiling, I love the color choices, I like the composition of it. I just think it looks really nice. And then, what books do you need to read? I usually don't feel like I need to read anything. I need to read my arcs that I've agreed to read. But the two books that I need to read this year are my ones for the remaining Gigi No Reread episodes. If you're not familiar, I co-host a podcast called No Cartridge, where each week we're talking about video games through a critical lens somehow, but quarterly we have a video game and book club where it's kind of like a comparative lit session where we're talking about a book and video game in tandem, treating a video game as a literary text just like we would a book. And we just recorded last week the quarter 2 one, which was The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin, talking about it with Psychonauts, talking about psychic engineering, ethics of the brain, and controlling people's minds, and all kinds of things that popped up. And if you're interested, the live show will be next week, I think, from whenever this is uploaded. And so yeah, come hang out with us. But our next ones are Alex Garland's The Beach with Far Cry 3, talking about tourist. This is one of the only novels that Alex Garland wrote, who is now a director known for Ex Machina and what else? Annihilation, etc. But this was also turned into a movie directed by someone that he ended up collaborating with again, Danny Boyle. Danny Boyle, there we go. Um, so I haven't seen the movie, so I'm excited to read the book first. And this book is actually very well rated. Like on Goodreads, I think it has like over 100,000 ratings and it's sitting at over a 4 star, which is very impressive, I think, for a book that's probably been read by all kinds of people because it was turned into a movie. But this one is about Richard, a gap year student who is introduced to a beautiful island by the mysterious Daffy, but with drugs and the glamorized violence of Vietnam War films haunting his perception of his Thai paradise, Richard soon finds the hideaway becomes a nightmare. And I do think that the plot of Far Cry 3 is very similar to this, but I also haven't played Far Cry 3 yet, so that'll be an exciting thing to do in tandem. And then our last one of the year, if you want to read and play these, you might want to get started now because we will be reading Gravity's Rainbow and playing Fallout New Vegas. And so these are both chunkier text. And yeah, those are the things that I will need to read is The Beach and Gravity's Rainbow. But other than that, I'm flexible. My favorite video or post that I've done this year, I have enjoyed starting to do like my nails with books. I want to keep working on thinking about how to pair those things together. I've been kind of doing it over on Instagram. But over here, I really liked my video on my most underrated horror, the most underrated horror that I read in 2025. I like talking about things that other people aren't talking about and hopefully introducing people to new things that they might be interested to check out. I also like talking about video games and visual novels and hopefully encouraging people to, check into those kinds of texts that maybe they haven't considered but are still reading and still thinking about narratives. I've just started recording at night sometimes and a possum just ran across the roof. So that is the kind of thing that I'm dealing with here. And then I also liked my video on my reading goals for brain rot. I think that I had some lively chat in the discussion. It reached a different audience than the people who watch my videos usually, and so hopefully made an impact on people considering how they might want to read. And I like being able to make a video that reaches new people, which I think is harder whenever you're kind of just going through the, talking about your TBR or talking about your wrap up. Like, why would people care about me? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And then the last one is about your fave book community members. Whose videos have I been watching lately? I've been watching Chanel Chapters, who I talked about in my last video. She's an Australian booktuber and she reads so much and talks about all of them very eloquently and very critically, and is definitely not someone who is just going to say the same thing that everyone else is saying about a book despite its popularity. If it's very popular, not popular at all, definitely uh, talking for herself, and a channel that I've been very happy to have started watching. But what else does book community members mean? I don't want to put a spotlight on anyone who doesn't have a channel necessarily, because I don't know how much you do or don't want to be spotlighted. But I love whenever people discuss things with me in the comments, just because I love hearing from a different point of view. And for example, Amelia always shares her thoughts, and I think is someone who is always very of herself as well, that she has. I like being told whenever I'm wrong about something, or if I liked a book but you don't. Yeah, definitely tell me. I don't want people just agreeing with me to agree with me. I love having some pushback on things. So any of that kind of input from the book community I think is all really valuable. I love someone disagreeing with me. I think it's great. But I just feel grateful for everyone who chats with me, because that is what I want, is to have a community where we can all talk and share about books, and also what that means with intersecting in the real world and how we treat people in our outside communities. That book community is, I guess, a commodified thing in some ways, that it can be so insular, where it's seen as content consuming, content creating, and that is not what I think I'm doing here. I definitely don't think I'm creating content. Hopefully, talking about books in a way that resonates with someone, and that you read a book and you consider its impact on the real world, and talking with your neighbors, and supporting your local community, if that makes sense. But thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful all the time, and I hope you've had a great first half of 2026. I would love if you have a response for any of these questions, that you let me know down in the comments, and I hope you have beautiful reading for the rest of the year. But I will talk to you again soon. Bye.